here we get to the crux of the matter. What is Mueller doing with this report? And this is the crux of the matter. What is Mueller actually doing with the report? So the first half of the report, Mueller does his job. He checks into collusion, and then he says, not evidence sufficient to prosecute, effectively exoneration. Second half of the report is him naming incident after incident after incident in which Trump acted badly, but borderline non-criminally, meaning that President Trump told people to lie to the media. Bad, not criminal. President Trump told K.T. McFarland he wanted her to write a memo. That was false. She refused. Borderline criminal, not actually criminal, because no corrupt intent and no actual work product. And this sort of thing runs through. I mean, this is the common thread that runs through here. So Mueller had basically four choices here. He had four choices after looking at all the material. Choice number one, recommend obstruction of justice charges against the president. Now, there are some burdens that prevent him from doing that. One, an obstruction of justice charge is very difficult to prove. Two, an obstruction of justice charge against the president of the United States exercising his lawful authority under the executive branch is very difficult to prove, and the president's own branch indicting him for obstruction of justice is questionable at best. It's a kind of weird legal theory, and Mueller even says that. He says, we could recommend that obstruction of justice charges be brought against him, but they may not be able to be brought until after he is no longer president. If he's in the White House, then that provides him with a certain level of immunity. So there are a bunch of problems with option number one, recommend obstruction of justice charges. Option number two, say, not evidence sufficient to prosecute. Now, this is the one that actually applies, because there is not evidence sufficient to prosecute. I've talked to several prosecutors over the last 24 hours. I don't know a prosecutor who would have been able to successfully prosecute this case or even would have taken this case. There is just too much reasonable doubt. In fact, this is basically a 50-50 coin flip at best for the prosecution. I think it's more like a 20-80 coin flip for the prosecution. It's a weighted coin, because the most plausible explanation for all of Trump's behavior is not corrupt intent. It's dude's pissed off and immature, and so he does pissed off, immature things. And that's the best explanation. So that was option number two, and Mueller didn't take it, which brings us to option number three. Him just saying, there's nothing here, acquittal, exonerated, be on your way. He wasn't going to say that because Mueller uncovered all of this activity, and he didn't like the activity, and so he wasn't just going to say there's nothing here. So again, of the three options stated so far, number two was the best. The second option was the best. That option that stated that there was not sufficient evidence to prosecute, because not sufficient evidence to prosecute is accurate. It doesn't mean there's no evidence. It doesn't mean that Trump did everything right. It just means you can't prosecute this because there's not enough evidence to win a conviction. That's the right answer. That is not what Mueller did. What Mueller did instead, as Andy McCarthy has pointed out at New York Post, instead what Mueller did is something different. Mueller said, you know what? Here's all the evidence. Go with God. Up to you, man. You do what you're going to do. That's not his job. His job is to recommend either a thumbs up or a thumbs down. That's it. That is his job, which means that what Mueller is actually doing here, and pretty much everybody is onto the game, what Mueller and his team are doing here is they don't like Trump very much. They think that Trump is corrupt. They think that Trump is a liar. They think that Trump was, in fact, attempting to obstruct justice, but they don't have evidence sufficient to prosecute. So instead of just saying no evidence sufficient to prosecute, they say it's on you, which means here's the grounds for impeachment. If you wish to move forward with an impeachment, this is the way to do it. That's what Mueller is doing here. Andy McCarthy correctly writes, if Special Counsel Mueller believed there was an obstruction offense, he should have had the courage of his convictions and recommended charging the president. Since he wasn't convinced there was enough evidence to charge, he should have said he wasn't recommending charges. But he didn't do either of those things, which means he copped out because what he actually wants is an impeachment hearing on all of these things. So the question is, did Mueller abdicate his responsibility here? What is his actual responsibility here? So the case in favor of Mueller, to be fair to him, is that the immense public scrutiny on this investigation meant that his report was going to be public. And because his report was going to be public, he did not want to be in a position of acquitting the president on charges. He felt that his job here was not, in fact, to recommend an up or down. It was to provide the information to the American public. That was half his job. Now, that really should not be his job. Remember, this started off as a counterintelligence investigation, trying to uncover nefarious activities by foreigners interfering in American elections. Then it morphed into a criminal investigation. Under the auspices of a criminal investigation, as McCarthy says, this should be an up or down thing. This should be up or down, but it is not up or down. Why isn't it up or down? Why is it that that both James Comey and now Robert Mueller are playing the same game. Really, the same game. James Comey, in 2016, famously went out there and laid forth all the grounds for Hillary Clinton's guilt and then said, not recommending prosecution. And people went, wait, what the hell? And there were people who were fighting mad on the left at Comey, saying, why did you lay out all the grounds? If you're not recommending prosecution, just say no prosecution recommended. Why are you laying out all the reasons she's guilty? Mueller basically does the same thing here, except kind of in reverse. He says, here are all the reasons that Trump is guilty, and I'm not going to let him off the hook. Right? That is what Mueller is doing here. Why is that the job of the FBI? The answer is it's not the job of the FBI. The job of the FBI is not to do this. Now, maybe the FBI feels a newfound public responsibility to be the public relations branch of every investigation. But the problem is that because this investigation was run that way, that's one of the things that led President Trump to be as obstructive and thwarting in his attitude as he was. It's what led to his antagonism, because Trump felt correctly throughout the entire investigation that every 5 minutes somebody was leaking something about Trump-Russia collusion or obstruction to the press. And then he got even more upset and he got more paranoid, and this led him to be more antagonistic. If the FBI did its job, they would have just recommended an up or down. This is true for both Hillary and it's true for Trump as well. They did not. They came out publicly and they exposed all of this information. Now, I thought that that was a good idea, and I still think it's a good idea for all the information to be in the public eye because this is what we expect. But as a balance of powers question, this is inside Congress's purview. It is not the job of the FBI to provide the grounds for impeachment. It is up to the FBI to provide the grounds for a criminal indictment. If that is not forthcoming, then they were really supposed to shut up. The fact the process works the way it works is not on Mueller. It is an indictment of the entire system, which should not work this way. If Congress wants to subpoena people and create grounds for impeachment, that is their job. It's not up to the executive branch to do the dirty work of providing the grid work for getting rid of other members of the executive branch on behalf of the legislature. It's a serious balance of powers problem.